and gentlemen, the story you are about to see is true.
But when they asked specifically what had he been given this night, what have you given him, the only thing he said was lorazepam. Dr. White will tell you that he simply overlooked the propofol. He overlooked the propofol. Propofol is never mentioned, either Dr. Cooper or Dr. Wynn. They do everything they can, but it's far too late to save the life of Michael Jackson. We also learned from Michael Amir Williams and Fahim Mohammed that following the pronouncement of death of Michael Jackson, that Conrad Murray asked if he could be taken back to the home because he needed to recover some cream that Michael would not want the world to know about. They both found this odd, and they came up together with a story to say that the police had taken their car keys. But think about the thought process of Conrad Murray at this time. What does he know? He knows his medical bags with the propofol and the other items are still in the house. He knows that People's 30 with his fingerprint on it is still at the house. He knows his 3 various medical bags, syringes, and various items are still at the house. Do you really think he was worried at that time that Michael would be concerned about a Benequin cream, that he had vitiligo and he had to use a medically necessary cream? Do you really think that was Conrad Murray's concern at that time? Conrad Murray had concerns. Conrad Murray's concern, as it was throughout this time period, was Conrad Murray. That was his concern. Sometime thereafter, Conrad Murray left the hospital after being involved with a press release and things of that nature. He left the hospital and apparently was not seen, at least at the hospital, again that day. Talk about the discovery of the bags up in the cabinet. And we know that that discovery occurred as a result of Conrad Murray telling the police about it in his interview of June 27, 2009. But what's interesting to note when you listen to the audio and you read the transcript and you take into account the testimony of Detective Scott Smith, Conrad Murray went into this interview thinking the bags had been discovered. When you piece together all the evidence, Conrad Murray knew the police had been there. He knew there was eventually going to be toxicology findings. He went into this interview to get ahead of the story. He went into this interview to get his version of events out there before the police discovered it on their own, and he looked even more guilty. This was a calculated plan. He assumed the police had found those bags in that upper cabinet. So the interview takes place, but what is said? Detective Smith, where's your bag with those syringes? Where's your bag where those syringes would be at now? Mr. Chernoff, oh really? Dr. Murray, I don't have them. Mr. Chernoff, I thought you left it there. Dr. Murray, yeah, I did. Detective Smith, where? Where did you leave it? Dr. Murray, in that same bedroom, in the closet, where it always stays. Conrad Murray thought the police was already in custody of those bags. He's coming forward to this interview for the self-preservation of Conrad Murray, to get ahead of the story, to put his version out there. Unfortunately, his version doesn't match up with any of the evidence. It doesn't match up with the phone records, or the text messages, or the emails. Conrad Murray put this out there because he thought the bags had already been discovered, and he knew the toxicology findings, when linked to what was found in those bags, would show that Michael Jackson died of acute propofol intoxication coupled with the contributory effect of the benzodiazepines. During direct examination, you would have believed that he had commissioned a study, he got results, and they chose not to publish it because the results were fairly predictable. He had nothing to do with the study. According to him, it was Mr. Flanagan. It's important and it's relevant as to the level of trust or credence you should give to any of Dr. White's opinions in this case at this point. What else did we learn from Dr. White? We certainly learned that he wouldn't administer propofol in a home.
If Michael Jackson had come to you, Dr. White, and indicated that he would like to hire you to administer propofol to him, to put him to sleep each night in his bedroom, would you do it?
Absolutely not. That would be a job that I would never consider.
Dr. White told us about the need to call 911.
As I said earlier, I think he should have called 911 sooner.
Dr. White told us about the administration of propofol in a bedroom.
Well, I would not administer propofol in a bedroom, as I stated earlier.
Dr. White, after some back and forth questioning, admitted that a pulse oximeter without an alarm, when you're not present, is utterly useless.
I'm asking about a pulse oximeter without an alarm. If you are not there to see it, to see the little tiny screen, and you're not there to hear it, it doesn't even have an alarm, what value does it serve?
Well,
In your absence, what value does it serve in your absence?
In your absence, it probably has little, if any, value.
None, correct?
Well, yeah, that's true.
Okay, it has no value, correct? If you're not in the room. Correct?
Correct, yeah.
It has no value. No value. We learned Dr. White's opinion regarding abandonment of a patient, particularly one who's evidently someone who likes to push propofol.
Would you walk out of the room and leave them alone with no personnel and no monitoring if you're of the opinion they like to push propofol themselves? Would you walk out of the room in that situation, yes or no?
No, I would not leave the room.
Dr. Steve Schaefer came in briefly on rebuttal. And you recall he had done the demonstration earlier showing the propofol bottle in the bag. It had drained just fine, controlling the roller clamps, as he explained. He explained how Michael Jackson died of respiratory failure. He explained how the standards of care, if you're going to rely on office-based standard of care, certainly if there's this new theory by Dr. White of bedroom-based anesthesia, you would require even greater care because you're in a remote location without, again, all the backup and there's no room for error. But specifically, as Dr. White hung his hat on the urine results to demonstrate his scenario as opposed to Dr. Schaefer's, and said that the urine results would show which one was more plausible as it related to the other, Dr. Schaefer, who is a scientist, who does do research and is transparent, explained that the Simons article, there was so little unchanged propofol in the urine that they did not even measure it. If that is the amount of unchanged propofol in the urine, the mean dosage of propofol was 2,003 milligrams. 2,003 milligrams to result in 70.71 unchanged propofol. Well, Michael Jackson had 82.5 unchanged propofol. Dr. Schaefer opined that based on the mean averages, if anything, this article and this research absolutely confirms Dr. Schaefer's finding of at least 1,000 milligram bottle draining into his body, and it absolutely debunks the defense scenario based on the very thing Dr. White said he was hanging his hat on, and that is the unchanged propofol levels in the urine. This rules out the defense self-administration theory and fully supports the hypothesis put forward by Dr. Schaefer. I know I've talked for some time. Conrad Murray, in multiple instances, deceived, lied, obscured, but more importantly, Conrad Murray acted with criminal negligence. Conrad Murray looked out for himself and himself alone. He wanted this employment. He didn't want to lose the employment, so he had to say yes. But that's not what a doctor does. That is not what a doctor does. That is antithetical to the legal obligation, the ethical obligation, the legal duty of a doctor. Conrad Murray's actions directly caused the death of Michael Jackson, but the people do not need to prove that. all that needs to be proven guilty of involuntary manslaughter, because he was a substantial factor, and any consequences that rose out of that were entirely ordinary and foreseeable. Defense counsel will have an opportunity to speak, and then I will have an opportunity to speak again briefly. I will be asking that you return with the verdict of guilty as to the sole count of involuntary manslaughter, because Conrad Murray caused the death of Michael Jackson. Conrad Murray abandoned Michael Jackson. Conrad Murray gave him propofol and abandoned him. Conrad Murray is criminally liable. Justice demands a guilty verdict. Thank you.
Mr. Walgren, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take the noon break a little bit late today. So,
indeed, all that needs to be proven is what has been proven in this trial. Conrad Murray lied to the ER. He lied to the medics. He was hiding the fact that he had pumped Michael full of propofol. There is criminal negligence way more than needed to prove involuntary manslaughter. I don't see how the jury can possibly find anything else but a guilty verdict on this one charge of the lowest level of criminal guilt. Personally, I think Michael was killed by second-degree murder. The minute Conrad Murray lied to Dr. Cooper and to Dr. Nugent, when he lied and did not tell the whole truth of what he had actually given Michael, at that point it became second-degree murder. When he didn't call 911 immediately, it became second-degree murder by poisoning, a violent death, which would get Conrad years, if not decades, in a state prison. Not to bring charges for both second-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, and involuntary, and let the jury decide which facts fit which level of criminality. That's the jury's job. What we've seen, the judge could have come to this conclusion in 10 seconds. But also there's something else I want to point out. And thank you, David Walgren. Flanagan should be indicted for trying to help manufacture false evidence and bringing Dr. White in and putting White on the stand. This has become clear. Now, White was fined $1,000 this week. Flanagan should not only be fined $100,000 for trying to falsify evidence in defense of his client and misrepresenting that evidence as his thorough research and study, which was proven absolutely to be false. We allow these lawyers to get away with way too much. So when you write your letter to Judge Michael Pastor at 210 West Temple Street, Los Angeles, California, 19th floor, ask him to bring criminal charges against Flanagan for falsifying evidence. Don't let them think they can get away with this. Because if you don't demand it, they will get away with it. But if you demand the maximum 4 years, who knows? And also say they could send them to Butte County or some other county. If LA County's too full and they can't put them in a state prison, send him to Butte County or Siskiyou County or Mendicino County, California. He can serve his time in those jails. They're not full, not all of them. I'm William Wagner giving you the report live as it happened here in Los Angeles. And we need to go back and go after the prosecutors in Santa Barbara for causing Michael so much stress that he had to travel the world and couldn't sleep. Tom Sneddon bears some responsibility for this, in my humble opinion. I'm William Wagner reporting this day, Thursday, in November 2011, for the Michael Jackson fans that care to know the truth. We'll get you some justice, Michael, eventually.